that little word, inspiration. God breathed and brought it to life. When did it go from being just print on a page, just black print on white parchment? When God breathed in it and He brought life to it. And so when I use it in a situation, what is incumbent upon me to do? I have to get connected to the one who lives in it. I've got to be so plugged into Him, so connected to Him, that as I begin to minister His Word, I do so understanding that it has absolute authority. Think about this now. So that the Apostle Paul, now watch this. The Bible said that they would even take pieces of cloth from his garments and they would take them and place them on people and they would be healed. Yet Paul said he asked God 3 different times to remove a hindrance, an issue in his life, and God said, no, my grace is sufficient. Had nothing to do with power, had nothing to do with ability, had nothing to do. It was all about discerning God's mind on it. And when Paul got it, he was good with it. He said, that's fine. Then he said, what did he say? He said, in fact, I'm going to start shouting over my infirmity because God's grace is showing through it. Now, folks, let me tell you something. That's being plugged in to the author. That's understanding what he's trying to say. God inspired. You may have never considered the reality that this book is alive. And that may not be in your house, but it is in mine. Because I know who lives in it and breathes out of it. And so when I bring it into my world, I bring it living into my world. I want to illustrate this for you in a way that you can understand. Tracy, blow up this balloon for me. Come on now, you can do this. That's pretty good. Afraid he's going to have a heart attack up here and we'll have to pray him back alive. I'm not sure you're there yet, so I don't want to run the risk. Thank you. With a reasonable approximation, do these appear the same to you? They look the same, don't they? Anything different that you can tell? Not really, but they're completely different. Do you know how? This morning about 8:30, I blew this one up at home and tied it off. You just saw him blow this one up. You know the difference? To get the difference, you got to go inside. Because the difference is at a level you can't tell with just a glance. But if you had the ability to go inside these balloons, you would see there's something different about them. They may look the same. They may appear the same. If I were to help me bust them, you bust that one. Let's see if you can do it better than I did. They may even make the same noise, but they were very different. That's why I meet folks all the time. They know these words, but they haven't figured out it's more than print on page. There is a living, breathing, divine authority here when you're plugged into that. And when you're plugged into that, it changes everything. Now I want to show you how that plays itself out. A few days ago, I was sitting in my study Thursday morning about 10:30, 10:45, and I looked over and my phone rang. And it said, Connor Engel. And I thought, he should be at school. So I looked at the phone, I picked it up, I swiped across. Hello? Papa, come get me. I'm finished. I said, what? He said, I'm done with school. Come get me. I said, have you talked to your mom? He said, Papa, I called you because I knew you couldn't say no. Anybody want to guess what happened about 15, 20 minutes later? I went pulling up in front of the school, and I got him because I can't say no. You know why he made that phone call? He knew me well enough to know exactly what I would do. Has anybody else heard what I've said today? He knew me well enough to know exactly what I would do. You understand me, church? You got to get to know Him well enough to know exactly what He'll do. And then it doesn't matter whatever's going on in my life. Chris Smith comes to me and says, Pastor, I got to put a habit aside. It's killing me. It makes me stink and smell. My wife won't kiss me. I got to stop. Pray for me. I am happy to do so, Chris, because I've talked to the man who inspired the Word, and it will set you free. Are you hearing me, church? Some of you still aren't getting this. You want to put a little power in your life? Then you get close to the inspiration of this book. You let it ingest itself into your life. That's why the Bible said, receive with meekness the engrafted Word. Let it pour into you. And it becomes more than word on parchment and page, but it connects you to its author. And you know what happens then? We begin to pray. We begin to pray. We begin to pray. And God begins to move. He begins to move. Because we're connected to what His purpose is and what He's trying to do. Isn't that what Jesus said? In my name, in my name, in my name. These things will happen because this Word becomes alive in people's lives. Stand with me today. Be sure in your life that this is more than an ornament on the table that you just scoop up as you head out the door to church once a month. I could get really personal and say, quick as ball season ends, and I'm not going to do all of that. Be sure it becomes more than that. Because if it doesn't, it will not do in your life what you think it's going to because you've read it in here. Because you're not using it right the way God intended it. Bow your heads with me just a moment. I want you to do something with me. If you're in this house right now, and there is something that you know today you need God to do that would represent a supernatural act on His part, an interventive act in something. Nobody's going to be looking around. I want you to just slide a hand heavenward right now. You need God to do something interventive. Okay? Now, just a few hands went up, and that's okay. But now, here's the really important question. I know what you want, because whatever you want is what motivated your hand going up. Are you positive you know what God wants? Because if you've been trying to apply this word to the situation and it doesn't seem to be moving things, then the next step is to step back from it and say, God, am I not hearing what you're trying to say to me about this? Am I not discerning correctly what you're attempting to do through this? In other words, have I not plugged into the inspired, the living part of this to make it fit my situation? So here's what I want you to do. If you slipped your hand heavenward, I want to ask you to come and join me in this altar area right now. Will you do that? Just step out and come quickly to the altar area if you slid your hand up.